The moment you fell from your horse, all you could think about was that you had lost the race. Your helmet rolled across the ground. You lay face down in the sand of the arena. You lifted your head and saw the emperor's box just a few meters in front of you. He was 16 years old, the supreme ruler of the entire Roman Empire. He was watching you, not just glancing your way, but staring at you in a way that sent a chill down your spine. At that moment, you had no idea what was about to happen. You only knew that you had lost the match. Your hair was strewn across your face, golden hair. Later, someone would tell you that it was that very golden hair that had doomed you or saved you, depending on how you looked at it. Your name is Heracles. You're from Korea, in Western Asia Minor. You're a slave. You don't remember how you became a slave. You only know you've been one since you were very young. Later, you became an apprentice to a charioteer named Gordius. He taught you how to control the horses, how to maintain speed through the turns, and how to find gaps in a tight pack of chariots. You weren't the best on the track. Sometimes you won, sometimes you lost. That day, you lost. You fell from your chariot, your helmet rolled away, and then you looked up and saw the emperor. They brought you to the palace that very day. Elagabalus was the kind of person you'd never seen in your life. He became emperor at the age of 14. He came from Syria, where his family had served as priests of the local sun god Elagabalus for generations. When he entered Rome, he was dressed in silk, adorned with jewels, and his face was painted. The entire Senate watched him enter, unsure how to react. They thought they could control this child. They were wrong. The first thing he did upon entering Rome that left everyone speechless was to move the black meteorite his family had been worshipping into Rome's holiest temple, forcing the gods of the entire empire to make way for that stone. Next, he married a Vestal virgin, one of Rome's most sacred priestesses, bound by a lifelong vow of celibacy, a rule known to all. He didn't care. Then, he began appointing charioteers and dancers to serve as the empire's military commanders and administrative officials. His logic was simple. Whoever pleased him held power. Records show he appointed a baker to manage the city's grain supply because certain qualities about that baker had impressed him. The entire Senate grew increasingly silent in his presence, for silence was safer than speaking. He also did something you'd heard about even before you entered the palace. He opened the royal baths to the public, not out of generosity, but because he wanted to observe the bathers from within. His servants scoured the city at his behest, searching for men he deemed worthy of the palace. You entered in a different way, after falling from a carriage, but others were sought out by his servants. When those men entered the palace, they had no idea why they'd been summoned. This is the man who calls himself your husband and king. He told all of Rome that he was going to marry you, and then he called himself your wife. It wasn't you who married him. It was he who married you. He publicly declared you to be his husband. In public, he called himself your wife and queen. He said he was proud to be known as the wife of Heracles. This statement went down in history, not because the historians wrote it to praise him, but because they found it so absurd that they felt compelled to record it. The senators of the entire Roman Empire sat there listening as the emperor made this announcement, and not a single one dared to speak, because speaking might have meant death. They simply sat there, silently accepting the first marriage in the history of the Roman Empire in which an emperor participated as a wife. After you entered the palace, your status changed overnight. When you were a slave, your mother was also a slave. After entering the palace, your mother was elevated to the same status as the wives of former consuls. Those former consuls were forced to acknowledge on formal occasions that a slave woman was their equal because her son was the emperor's husband. Officials came to visit you. Generals bowed before you. They brought gifts and spoke of their hope to receive your favor. You have no military achievements, no political accomplishments, no reason to possess such power. You are merely the one who fell from the chariot, the one whose golden hair caught the emperor's eye. That is all. Your life in the palace takes on a concrete form. You live in a place far better than anywhere you ever lived as a charioteer. You eat foods you never knew existed. You wear clothes made of fabrics you've never even touched before. People attend to you. They anticipate your needs before you even speak. But you've noticed one thing. There's something in the way those who serve you look at you. It's not respect. It's the caution of those who don't know if this person will still be here tomorrow. Because the emperor's favor is something that can vanish at any moment. They know it, and you're slowly coming to realize it too. Sometimes, as you sit before those officials, you think of those mornings on the racetrack. You think of Gordius teaching you how to maintain speed through the turns. You think of the races you won and lost. You think of the way you saw the turn in that split second before you crashed. Those feelings feel more real than anything now. You don't know if that counts as a loss. Then you realized something that took you a while to fully grasp. He cheated on you on purpose, just so you would strike him. The emperor isn't the sort to stay quietly in one relationship. He has a host of other lovers. You know this. All of Rome knows it. His servants scour the city's bathhouses and docks, seeking out men they deem attractive to bring to the palace. At first, you thought this was simply the emperor's nature. You suppressed that discontent and carried on with your life. Then, you discovered something even stranger. Every time you caught him with someone else, he displayed a side of himself completely different from his usual self. He would shrink back. He would wait to see what you would do. There was something in his eyes, not guilt, but anticipation. Then you realized he was doing it on purpose. He deliberately spent time with others where you could find him. He was deliberately provoking you. He wanted you to hit him. He enjoyed being punished by his husband. Cassius Dio wrote about this in his records. The emperor would actively seek opportunities to be caught cheating by his male lover, then accept the consequences. It was a fixed pattern between them. As you stood there, you thought for a long time. Before you stood the emperor of the Roman Empire. He could execute anyone at any moment. He could end anyone's life with a single glance. Yet he had expended so much energy planning how to get you to strike him. You struck him. In that moment, you didn't know if you were truly angry or if you had simply entered a game whose rules you both knew. At some point, that distinction ceased to matter. But the calm didn't last long because one day his servants brought a new man from across the city. His name was Zodicus. He was an athlete from Smyrna in Turkey, famous throughout the empire for a very specific reason. The emperor dispatched an escort larger than the one used for foreign envoys to bring him to the palace. The moment you heard the news, you knew you faced a real threat, not just another of the emperor's ordinary lovers, but someone the emperor had gone to such great lengths to bring in. You did something that still sounds jaw-dropping 2,000 years later. You bribed the emperor's attendants, the men responsible for pouring wine at banquets. You gave them enough money to slip a specific drug into Zodicus's cup. The drug had a very specific effect. That night, Zodicus was completely incapacitated. The emperor was deeply disappointed. He believed Zodicus had deceived him. The next day, Zodicus was expelled from Rome. You stood in the palace, knowing you had won. You had triumphed in a palace intrigue 2,000 years ago in Rome through bribery and drugs. You'd experienced that feeling of victory on the racetrack before, but winning there relied on speed and skill. This victory, however, was built on your understanding of how the court operated. You had transformed from a race car driver into someone capable of manipulating a wine cup. You weren't sure when you'd learn to do this. Zodicus lived a long time after that. He was exiled and, ironically, did not die in the coup of 222. You didn't know that at the time. You thought you had won, and you did win. It was just that the true cost of that victory wouldn't become clear until much later. After your victory, the emperor held you in even higher regard. Then he made that decision. He announced that he would make you Caesar, the second most powerful figure in the empire and heir to the throne. When the entire Senate heard the news, the silence that fell was heavier than ever before. His grandmother, Julia Mesa, was the woman who had truly propelled him to the throne. She knew her grandson better than anyone. She sprang into action immediately. She mobilized all her political resources to stop it. She succeeded. You did not become Caesar, but the announcement itself had already prompted the commanders of the Praetorian Guard to begin seriously discussing what they needed to do. On March 11th, 222, the Praetorian Guard struck. They found the emperor at a celebration. They stormed in. The emperor tried to flee. It is said he hid in a chest. They found him. They killed him. His mother, Julia Soemia, was there as well. She tried to protect her son, and she too was killed. They dragged both bodies through the streets of Rome. They intended to throw the bodies into the Tiber, but they were too heavy. In the end, they tied weights around his neck and sank him into the water. He was 18 that year. There is no record of where you were when they came for you. Perhaps you were in the palace, or perhaps elsewhere. Cassius Dio did not write about this in detail. He only wrote that you were executed in 222. The few lines he wrote about you are sandwiched between his criticisms of the emperor's conduct. Your death occupies only a few words in his account, just as your appearance occupies only a few words. A blonde charioteer who fell from his chariot and died sometime. 4 years passed from the time you fell until your death. Cassius Dio recorded you in his historical work. He wrote of how you went from being a charioteer to the emperor's husband, of how you rendered that athlete incapable, and of how the emperor wished to make you Caesar. He wrote these things with a critical eye. In his view, all of this was proof of the empire's decline. Yet he wrote it down nonetheless because these events truly happened. They happened in the very heart of Rome's power. If your helmet hadn't rolled away that day, no one in the stadium would have seen your golden hair. You would have continued your races. You would have kept winning and sometimes losing. You would have grown old in some ordinary year. No one would have written down your name. No one would have included your story in the history books. You would have been a person who vanished completely into the mists of time. But the helmet rolled away. The emperor looked up and saw you. 4 years later, both of you were dead. He was 18. You were probably about the same age. 2,000 years later, your name is still known. Not because you did anything great, but because you fell from a chariot, and that helmet rolled away at the most inopportune moment. In his account, you are a supporting character in an absurd tale, evidence used to illustrate just how abnormal that emperor was. You are not a person, you are an argument. This is how you exist in history. But there were moments during those 4 years that Cassius Dio did not include. He did not write about how you felt when you first entered the palace and saw those marble columns. He did not write whether, on some night, you thought of Gordius, of those mornings at the stadium. He did not write whether, after winning that palace struggle, you felt the victory was real or absurd. He did not write whether, at some moment, you truly understood the situation you were in. He only wrote what you did. He did not write who you were. If your helmet hadn't rolled away that day, no one in the arena would have seen your golden hair. You would have continued your races, winning some and losing others. You would have grown old in some ordinary year. No one would have written down your name. No one would have included your story in the history books. You would have been a person who vanished completely into the mists of time. That's how fate sometimes works, without any logic, without any fairness. Just a helmet. It rolled away. Did you ever wonder if those 4 years were worth it? Before you entered the palace, you were a slave. After you entered, you were the emperor's husband. And then you died. If you hadn't entered the palace, you might have lived out your days in some shack by the racetrack, forgotten by everyone. But you would have lived longer. You didn't have time to finish that calculation. The day the Imperial Guards came, you had just begun to grasp what this place was all about. And then it was over. Just a helmet, that's all. And one more thing. That athlete, Zodicus, you beat him with drugs. After he was exiled, he lived for many years out there. He outlived that coup, outlived you, outlived that emperor. He died of old age somewhere, an ordinary man. No one remembers him in particular. You defeated him and then you died. He lived on. You didn't have time to settle that score either.